everyone, my name is Gia Machamba. Unfortunately, our associate for the computational models of memory, Jin Lee, is unwell today, so I'm the co-associate. I'll be presenting, and then the interns in our group, Mayesha, Dashrathi, Vibhav, and Mena, will be answering our questions as well. So we're all here, and we're looking forward to presenting our research today. So today we're going to be delving into the area that's really at the intersection of computational and cognitive neuroscience. Specifically, we focus on computational models of memory. Now, we know that memory is an important aspect of the human brain, but understanding how it works has implications not only for how we can model and simulate it, but also how we can build a model that replicates to the highest degree of human functioning, the way that our brain works. So our research explores two different approaches to artificial intelligence. The first is the symbolic approach, and the second is the connectionist approach. So both the symbolic and the connectionist approaches can be applied to develop computational models of memory. Now, each of these models aim to replicate the human memory processes, but they leverage different techniques and different methodologies to achieve the same goal. So by examining each of these approaches, we're not only trying to build a smarter artificial intelligence machine, we're also trying to look at whether or not artificial intelligence can simulate to the highest degree, like I said, the way that our brains work and the way that our memory works. Now, our objectives were three of the most common ones that you find in this debate between symbolic and connectionist AI. And so we first wanted to explore and analyze how the two different approaches are utilized to create a computational model of memory. Symbolic AI is used to deal with a high-level, more abstract, rule-governed system, and so this is what we see from the 50s through the 70s in the development of artificial intelligence. On the other hand, you have connectionist artificial intelligence, and here, these are what you're hearing about these days. So since the 70s, we've been looking at machine learning models, neural networks, and deep learning. And so these are connectionist approaches to artificial intelligence that mimic the way the human brain processes information. It's more connected, and there's networks there as opposed to something that's rule-governed, where there's a series of instructions being followed by an algorithm. Our second objective was to qualitatively assess how effective these two different approaches were in simulating the memory process itself. So this would include understanding how the models can replicate the memory formation process, storage process, retrieval process, the whole end-to-end system. And lastly, we wanted to determine the potential of each of these artificial intelligence models in representing a learning mechanism that's similar to us in the human brain. Now, the learning mechanism is important because an artificial intelligence, as it's being developed, can not only store and recall information, but the learning aspect and how you can learn from the stored memory itself is what characterizes or separates a computational model of memory from something that isn't artificial intelligence based. So let's move on to our methodology section. Now, this was interesting because, of course, we used an extensive literature review to conduct this through the Web of Science core collection. We used keywords like computational model, memory, artificial intelligence, and cognitive neuroscience to filter our search. But what was interesting was that symbolic artificial intelligence and connectionist artificial intelligence go by a variety of different names, such as, like I said, with connectionist AI, machine learning, deep learning, or neural networks. With symbolic AI, it's classical AI or rule-governed AI or algorithms. And so these were the keywords that we were using to filter our search. Specifically, we looked for the highly cited papers to ensure that we were considering influential or at the very least credible studies that are widely cited, and this yielded 269 papers. To focus on the most impactful work in this specific field, we narrowed this down to the top 100 most cited papers and included 82 research articles and 18 review papers that were sort of literature reviews in the form that we were doing. Now, for our data extraction and analysis, we employed the bibliometrics package using RStudio and Excel, and these helped us organize and analyze the data efficiently in such a manner that we were able to do key findings and identify trends and gaps in the literature. Particularly, we paid attention to the context within which a computational model of memory was built and discussed, so that we can look at the specific applications to different brain regions in different clinical research settings, as well as different industrial settings. Now, our trend analysis revealed in our results that the term memory, of course, is the most frequently occurring keyword, but this indicates a strong focus on memory within the notion of a computational model itself, of cognition. Other important related terms to memory included systems, retrieval, decision-making, model, and neurons. And these highlight critical areas of interest in our research community. Specifically, we noticed an increase in topics like working memory, prefrontal cortex, and basal ganglia over the recent years, which highlighted to us, or suggested to us, that there's a growing interest in understanding the neural or neurological correlates of cognition in memory, in functions like memory, decision-making, and more. Now, the frequency and context of each of these terms shows a difference too, and a shift in the research priorities of both neuroscientists, computational scientists, as well as even cognitive scientists. And it points to a deeper exploration of how our brain works, as opposed to building models of artificial intelligence without neurological basis going forward. So from our findings, one of the things that's been most evident is that there's been a significant increase in research activity related to computational models of memory, as opposed to computational models of other forms and functions of cognition over the past 2 decades. Now, we see several promising directions this could take. One is the development of a brain-computer interface that leverages AI memory models, which could ultimately revolutionize the way in which we interact with machines and make communication more seamless and intuitive between a human and a computer. We also see advancements in intelligent robots or embodied cognition, which could utilize a human-based memory or a human-simulated memory to improve the interaction with humans and ultimately develop our understanding of memory itself. The third way in which we find an application or a promising direction is personalized cognitive enhancement strategies, which we think the artificial intelligence, especially an integrated one, could tailor learning and memory aids towards, especially to enhance their cognitive abilities. This also would occur in a setting like education, where we have adaptive learning platforms that could provide personalized and data-driven learning experiences for students to achieve their potential. Now, our research has highlighted so far the significant role that artificial intelligence plays in advancing our understanding through a computational model of memory of cognitive processes themselves. Specifically, we want to emphasize the necessity of an integrated approach that combines both symbolic and connectionist artificial intelligence to effectively develop a computational model of memory that's most accurate and most reflective of the way that humans do. Symbolic artificial intelligence, like I said, is structured and rule-based and has a framework of algorithms, and so it excels in logical reasoning and it can handle abstract representations. In this way, it provides a clear and interpretable framework, which then allows us to understand high-level cognitive functions in a very simple manner. On the other hand, connectionist artificial intelligence is more elusive, which is why we have the problem of interpretability. This is inspired by the actual architecture and neurological functions of the human brain, and so it's adept at adapting to uncertainty, and so adept at pattern recognition, learning from data, and performing in some capacity inductive projection or prediction through a neural network, which is why it allows us to capture the complexities of memory formation and retrieval itself. For these reasons, researchers can leverage the strengths of both symbolic and connectionist artificial intelligence to simulate what memory looks like in both a certain context and an uncertain context. And in this way, we find that this would create the most accurate computational model of memory. Of course, our references include data and tools from the Web of Science, BiblioShiny, and a methodology with RStudio and Excel. But we also think that one key piece of literature that we found in our research was Ashok Goel's work looking back, looking ahead, Symbolic versus Connectionist Artificial Intelligence, published in the AI magazine this last year. Thank you all for your time and attention, and we are now happy to take any questions or discuss any aspect of the research that you find interesting. Thank you.
Curry, you can put your question in the chat or you can yourself.
Okay. So, I think the first one is, where has the symbolic connectionist approaches been implemented? What has been their success rate? So the symbolic approach was most commonly used from the 1950s through the 1970s, 75s. And we saw this in the form of Alan Turing. So the Turing machine and what you see today as the Turing test, all of that has been historically implemented with symbolic artificial intelligence. The most common example is if you asked a medical diagnosis machine, if you give it certain instructions that said, if you experience this symptom and you experience Y symptom, and if you experience Z symptom, then this is the particular output. And so something that's rule governed is symbolic, which is what the history of artificial intelligence has shown us. Connectionist approaches have been more successful, but in different fields and different applications. So symbolic approaches traditionally have been used for where you see rules. So the medical industry, the healthcare profession, legal settings, as well as for it to perform a set of rules, so logic, mathematics, that's been most successful with symbolic AI. And then connectionist AI has been implemented in the recent years for, like I said, more uncertain settings or inductive processing. So you see that in cases of natural language processing with ChatGPT, you see it with image processing, and so you see that with DALL-E, and you see that with more pattern recognition. So all of the sensory capabilities that humans have that are currently being replicated in the form of computer vision or natural language processing, that's where connectionist AI is at its best. And let's see, what are the primary challenges in developing AI-driven computational models that accurately mimic human memory? So the primary challenge, I would say, is developing one that's most reflective of human memory. And the challenge there is that each of the approaches that we currently have, so symbolic and connectionist approaches, they're good, but they are applicable to two different settings. And to integrate those capacities, to integrate those approaches and create one integrated approach to memory is the one that's the biggest challenge right now. There's a few approaches that are currently being taken. So you might have heard of Neuro Symbolic AI, and that's one approach to integrate the two. But there's still more information and more development needed there. The next question is, what emerging AI technologies or methodologies hold promise for advancing memory modeling beyond the current approaches? Well, the one that would advance memory to a high degree would probably be embodied cognition. So, like I said, intelligent robots that have interactions with the environments that they exist within and they operate within. That would give them a lot of more sensory information and data that they would need to process. And so that allows us from a developer perspective to see how and what is needed, what are the gaps in the literature there for what the environment can provide us to develop our own computational models. Mina, go ahead, you can answer the next question.
Okay, so next question I can answer is, other than an increasing interest in AI models of memory, has there been any implications for the study? So, can you kind of just elaborate on that? So there have been many branch implications for the study. So we utilize Connectionist AI pretty much everything that we do. But when we use it for memory, some of the implications we use is that memory acts as a node within Connectionist AI, and we can use it to discover other nodes that are similar to it through its pattern recognition. Yeah, if that's what you mean by implications.
Okay, I can take the next question. So that's, do you think the pushback against AI will increase and or the effect of the advancement of AI? So for this, I would say that, let's see, the pushback against AI would probably not increase. I would say that given that there are two different approaches with Symbolic and Connectionist AI and the developments that they're making in two separate applications or two separate types of applications, we would see that the pushback is currently in terms of AI alignment. So it's about what the AI is being used for as opposed to the model itself and the tool itself. So as long as the tool is used in the way that is either the most ethical or complies with the most policies, that would be the way in which AI would currently continue to advance or progress. But the pushback of it would be in terms of what it's used for, not in terms of how it's developed. The one thing I will say about the pushback against AI has been increasingly policies trying to be developed about the problem of interpretability, which is Connectionist AI a black box? Do we know what's going on? And what are the processes being used in its decision making? And so that's one area where there's pushback, ethically speaking. Okay, next question is, what further studies can be built off of these results? So this is a good question, and I mean, pretty much anything in the artificial intelligence field can be built off of the results of this. Specifically, when you're looking at a computational model of memory, the next step would be to develop like I said, an integrated approach connecting Symbolic and Connectionist AI. And so, first of all, understanding that there is a focus on memory as opposed to decision making or creativity or some other cognitive function would give a direction to further research to look at how to build an integrated model that responds and specifically tries to reflect memory. But the other study that could be built off of these results is how, or specifically why memory is, or what memory can provide to us humans in terms of learning, in terms of creativity, and in terms of decision making, that those are not encompassing of themselves. So that would be one other area that, or a study that could be built off of these results.
I'm sorry to we can take one more question and we should move on to the next presenter.
Okay, that sounds good. So the last question that I see here is, what other neurobiological mechanisms is AI inspired by? Would the hippocampus be considered as well, as it plays a role in memory encoding, consolidation, etc.? So this is a good question, and currently, given the fact that a computational model usually replicates only one or two aspects of whatever it's replicating, the Connectionist artificial intelligence system is inspired by, or is biologically inspired by, the fact that we have neurons that are interconnected in our brain. And so that's the one aspect that's being replicated right now, including, of course, that there's an input and output mechanism. Now, the hippocampus, of course, is understood to a greater degree than most other cognitive functions in our brain and most other cognitive aspects, anatomical aspects of our brain. But because the hippocampus is a black box itself, the computational model can only be used at a very simple level right now, which is why it's only replicating those two aspects in modern artificial intelligence systems. So it is a great question, and I think the more advancements we have in neuroscience will lead us to more advancements in development of artificial intelligence models of memory or of other cognitive functions as well. So I hope that answers your questions. Thank you so much for your time.